Hey PokeDad fan club, it's me PokeDad, and today we're looking at some more cards from Rage of the Broken Sky, XY9 Breakpoint for us in the English speaking world. Uh, and we're looking at Phantom, Trevenant, and Trevenant Break. Now, normally I don't even look at like the basics like Phantom, I normally wouldn't look at, but this one is really cool. Um, and might be a little bit longer video just because this set of cards, Phantom, Trevenant, and Trevenant Break, I just feel is going to be very playable um, in the coming meta. And so I want to talk about some of the ins and outs of this. So we're going to start off with Phantom. All right, it's a 50 HP psychic type. Obviously, it evolves into Trevenant. And it has, for one colorless energy, Ascension. And we've seen this attack on like Zorua, and you actually see it on a lot of the promo cards, like Charizard EX, I think, had an Ascension. Rayquaza EX, I think, has an Ascension version. But Ascension basically allows you to search your deck for a card that evolves from Phantom and put it right onto Phantom. And this counts as evolving Phantom. So here's the thing. The reason why I think this is so awesome is because Trevenant is one of those cards that you want to try to evolve right away. Matter of fact, we actually Wally, right now there's Gengar EX and Trevenant. And the Trevenant from XY, if you're not familiar, has item locking ability. So a lot of people are trying to get a turn 1 Wally so that they can item lock their opponent before the opponent even gets a chance to play any items. Now, if you happen to go second, though, I think this is really cool because if you start Phantom, put an energy on it, instead of having to use the Wally to evolve right away, you can go ahead and play Sycamore, play another supporter, and then use the attack Ascension to get right into Trevenant. And the XY base set Trevenant, the one that does the item locking, is still going to be very playable with this break. We're going to talk in just a minute when we switch over to the Trevenant what I think some of the ideas are behind using the old item locking one, Trevenant, from XY base set, and then looking at the new Trevenant from Rage of the Broken Sky. So let's go ahead and look at that. So that's all I really wanted to share about Phantom, is it does have the Ascension, so you'll be able to get right into Trevenant right away. And one thing I have noticed about a lot of these cards is they're not giving necessarily supporter cards for these break cards, but they're putting attacks within the Pokemon to make the breaks a little bit easier to evolve. We saw that in the Greninja break, where if you get a Frogadier in play, his attack allows you to search your deck for 3 Frogadier and put them on the bench. So that would save you a whole evolution line. Instead of having to go from Froakie to Frogadier, next turn you could go from Frogadier to Greninja very quickly. And if you even had a Wally, you could go from Frogadier to Greninja and then Greninja to Greninja Break. So they're trying to make these breaks viable, and they didn't do a very good job necessarily in the first set breakthrough, but Breakpoint seems pretty good. Anyway, on to Trevenant. So here's our new Trevenant card. It does have an ability and it has an attack, very similar to the XY base set one, which has an ability, which is the item locking ability, and then it has an attack, I think like Tree Slam or something like that, does 60 damage, and then does 20 to 2 bench Pokemon. So that one I think is going to be played more, but I think this one is going to be played too, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Alright, so this Trevenant is a stage 1, has 110 HP. The ability is Seed of Anxiety. If this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent's basic Pokemon attacks cost a colorless more. So it's like a head ringer for all basic Pokemon. Now, that's very interesting. That's very, very interesting. I'll come back to that in just a moment, but let's look at the attack. For a Psychic and a double colorless, which is very similar to the other Trevenant, which has a Psychic and a double colorless, the one I just told you that does like 60 and then 20 to 2 bench. This one has Energy Press. It does 70 damage, and this attack does 10 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So it kind of synergizes with the ability because they're going to be forced to have to put more energy on, and the more energy they have on, the stronger this attack plays. However, I don't really care for that attack much. The ability seems to be a little bit worse than the item locking ability. I think for the most part, most people are going to use the other Trevenant that does the item locking. But let's talk about some possibilities here. Obviously, obviously we can still use Gengar EX and Trevenant. And this Trevenant, though, that requires the basic Pokemon to have an additional attack cost of 1 colorless, I can see this being used against Night March. Yeah, Night March has gotten really, really strong nowadays. It's not unbeatable, but it's near... I mean, if you miss a beat, it's going to pretty much take you down. And it hits certain weaknesses like with Lightning and with Psychic that it makes it pretty much very hard to play certain decks. Anything that's weak to Lightning, anything that's weak to Psychic, Night March is pretty much going to steamroll over. So this card, this Trevenant right here with the ability Seed of Anxiety, I feel like you could use to stop Night March, slow Night March down. Think about it. Joltics now have to cost 3 colorless energy to do Night March, and the Pumpkaboos have to 4 colorless energy. And yeah, okay, so Dimension Valley's out. Now they still have to do 3. So even with Dimension Valley, they still have to have a 3rd energy on there. That's going to be very, very tough for Night March. And this card alone might be a hard counter just to Night March decks. And we'll talk about the break, which will even help more in just a moment. But I could actually see a person playing 4 Phantoms and then doing 2 versions of each Trevenant, the one from XY base set and this one, or maybe just a 1 of this one and 3 of the item locking one, because it'll just give you variety. Because if you're playing just a big basics deck like Seismitoad even, I mean, instead of Quaking Punch for 2 colorless, now he's got a Quaking Punch for 3 colorless. Giratina now has to have 5 energies on it before it can attack. I don't know. This seems like maybe it is situational, but in those situations where it would be played, it would be very, very good. All right. So that's my thoughts on this. Now, why do I think this is going to be the bane of Night March? Well, let's look at the break. Okay. First of all, the breaks, I've heard a lot of just people weren't real impressed with the gold looking color, but I think this is one of the better ones. I mean, when you look at the texture, you actually can kind of see the bark and the tree texture in here. And so this is one of the better breaks, just from an aesthetic point of view. But not only that, it's going to be really good from a playable point of view too. Okay, it's 160 HP stage 2 in essence, which is pretty good. I mean, 160 HP, that's getting right up there next to EXs, and yet they still only take 1 prize card. Though you do got to remember with breaks, it takes a little bit longer to get them out. And secondly, when you do lose one, you've put a lot of resources in getting that break out. So even though they're only going to take 1 prize card, it still was a lot of resources for you to get it out. However, that being said, let's look at the attack. So you can see it's 1 Psychic and a colorless, which means Dimension Valley will reduce it down to just a Psychic if we have it in play. Alright, the attack is Silent Fear. Place 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. What? I mean, this opens up so many possibilities. First of all, let's talk about what it's not, okay? It's not Noivern's Boom Burst, which does 30 damage to every Pokemon, all right? 30 damage to every Pokemon can be blocked by Mr. Mime. But when it says place 3 damage counters, that cannot be blocked by Mr. Mime. It's like having an army of Crobats come in and playing them down all at one time, and you get to do 3 damage counters to every single Pokemon on the bench. And onto the active. All right, so let's talk about some possibilities just with that. Okay, first of all, the first thought is Gengar, the new Gengar from Breakthrough. All right, it is a stage 2, and now you're looking at basically trying to play 2 stage 2s. But if you can item lock them, that's going to give you a little bit of time to get the Gengar going. Trevenant Break can be putting damage on the field, and you're doing 3 damage counters to every single Pokemon on the field, and then you come back with Gengar and you just sweep, knocking out EX after EX after EX. Now, the one problem I see is going against like stage 1 decks. Gengar is probably not going to trade off well, and neither is necessarily Trevenant Break. So that might be where we use Tree Slam, where we hit for 60 and do damage to the bench and try to take 2 or 3 prizes that way. But still, to be able to place 3 damage counters on every single one of your opponent's Pokemon, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, another thing that I can see this being teamed up with is Meowstic. I used to play a deck where I used Gourgeist from XY base set, which did 2 damage counters to every single Pokemon, and then I would come in and use Meowstic to sweep just by taking all the damage counters and using Ear Influence and putting damage counters wherever I wanted. So this is going to help a lot of Psychic decks. Another deck that it's going to help, Mega Gallade. Mega Gallade really has no good way of getting damage counters on. I mean, there's Fortress and there are bats, but I feel like Trevenant Break here is going to be so much more helpful because it's a bulky break card that's going to take a little bit of damage. It's also potentially going to item lock the opponent or cause them to have to pay an extra energy just to play attack. And then it's going to begin putting damage on everything so that when Mega Gallade comes in, he can use Unwavering Blade and he'll just keep adding 30 damage. And believe me, when Shaman's on the bench, that 30 damage adds up over time. I mean, if you can get 2 Trevenants going, get a Trevenant to do Silent Fear twice, that's 60 damage on Shamans that are on the bench. Throw in a couple Unwavering Blades, and now you could potentially take 6 prizes in one turn. So do I think Trevenant Break is going to be playable? I think absolutely. I think it will see some competitive play, though I do think it's going to require some creativity to be used. Another idea I like is using it potentially with Mega Mewtwo X or Y. You can item lock them, begin putting damage counters on them, and then begin charging up your Mega Mewtwo's while they're item locked. So I think it's potentially very good. Anyway, guys, those are my ideas. Share with me what your ideas are with this card. How would you use this card? Even if it's something I already discussed, tell me exactly how you would put it together, and let me know what your thoughts are on this card. Please hit like. We're trying to get 20 likes on this video, so we'd really appreciate that. And if you haven't, please subscribe. We appreciate and value every single one of our subscribers. We try to put out the best content possible, and we thank each and every one of you, our viewers, for supporting us. Anyway, this is PokeDad signing off. We'll talk to you later. Bye.